especially as we head into the heavier spending months. Now, before we get into it, I want to make it clear I love thrifting. This is not an anti-thrift video. However, I have fallen into some traps over the years that I want to talk about. Today, we're taking a closer look at everything from pricing scams and markups to questionable quality and even some of the psychological pitfalls that are easy to fall into. Don't worry, I'll also be sharing some thrifting tips and ways we can all avoid these traps, plus some of my favorite thrift wins. So if this all sounds good to you, let's jump on in. Thrift stores have traditionally been known as a more budget-friendly alternative to regular retail and for their affordable prices. However, with inflation on the rise, I've noticed many thrift stores are following the same upward trend in pricing, and sometimes this goes a little too far. For example, lately I've come across multiple household and decor items that you can actually get at the dollar store for a better price. At Value Village recently, I found this soap bottle priced at $4.99, which I immediately found funny since all the other soap bottles, some even nicer in my opinion, were going for less. But the thing that really got me was that the exact same bottle, brand new at the Dollarama next door, was just $2.50. I also saw this kitchen storage jar was almost $6 here, whereas at the dollar store it was only $3.75. Even the smaller version was still 50 cents cheaper. These were just some of the examples I came across that day, and I don't know what was going on with all the $4.99s. Maybe it was just the Value Village, but seriously, it felt like a trap because both this hurricane glass and faux plant were also 50 cents cheaper next door. Even though we're technically only talking a difference in dollars with these markups, it still adds up, and if you're anything like me, I always want to make sure I'm getting the best bang for my buck. I usually skip over the smaller, more common items, especially the kind you can easily find at the dollar store. Instead, I focus on pieces that are truly one of a kind, like vintage finds, unique items, and anything that stands out for its quality and character. I also keep an eye out for real pottery or anything handmade. All this to say, if you've got the time, it's definitely worth scoping out the market because it makes it so much easier to spot these questionable prices. Plus, you might be surprised with where the best deals actually are. Also, let me know if you guys have run into this kind of stuff lately. I really want to know all your stories. Okay, something I've come across over the years but have been noticing even more lately is when the thrift store has the exact same item but for wildly different prices. It's always a good idea to keep an eye out for doubles, especially with items that come in sets, just to make sure the pricing is consistent and you're not accidentally overpaying. At Habitat for Humanity, I came across probably one of the worst examples I've seen. While doing my usual browse, I spotted this really cute seasonal garland for just $5, which I was excited about since similar ones at places like Michael's can go for closer to $40. Then I noticed a second one close by, but this one had a $21 price tag, which is just over 4 times the price. I even double checked for flaws, but they were both the exact same length and identical. And yes, $21 is still technically cheaper than retail, but this did not feel like a thrift store price. I don't know, what do you guys think? Also, speaking of items that come in sets, take a look at this. These 2 coffee mugs were both priced at $1.99, but literally just one shelf up, the exact same mug was marked double at $3.99. I even found another one for $3.99 that had a slightly different handle, but it still looks like an almost identical match to the other 3, and I don't think that justifies the price jump. Now, I wasn't planning on buying anything here, but stuff like this always makes me wonder how the pricing is even decided. To me, this almost felt like it just depended on who was in that day and what mood they were in. If you guys have had a similar experience or have any theories, definitely share them because I'm so curious. Another important tip is not to just scope out the general retail market, but to also keep in mind that even the thrift stores themselves can have totally different price tiers. Just the other week at Mission Thrift, I found these 3 black candlestick holders originally from IKEA selling for just 99 cents each. Fast forward to a few days ago at Value Village, I saw the exact same set, but this time each one was priced at $2.99. Now, I get that you can't always be in the right place at the right time when it comes to deals, but this just goes to show that sometimes it really pays to know your local thrift stores and their pricing patterns. For example, this gold frame photo was actually a thrift flip, and I knew right away it was a great deal, especially for just $1.99. At most of the other thrift stores in my area, even plain empty frames usually start at around $3 or more. Okay, so we've looked at some of the smaller pricing issues, but where it really starts to get out of hand is when the thrift store prices come close to or even higher than what you'd find at the more upscale retailers. And for this next example, we're comparing with HomeSense, also known as Home Goods if you're in the US. Now, one thing I always recommend, especially these days, is to check the items top to bottom for any of the original retail tags. To be fair, usually when a tag is still on, in my experience, it's been a decent deal, but once in a while you'll run into something like this statue here at Value Village. It was marked at $15.50 $7.49, but when I flipped him over, I saw the original HomeSense clearance tag for just $9, which is almost half the price. And not only that, but because the statue was so loose and wobbly, the price tag was also labeled as is. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd love to know what goes into pricing some of these items, and in this case, I seriously doubt the person looked him up and down before putting him out. Something else I've been noticing lately is a trend with thrift store wall art. For example, this medium-sized picture was priced at $15.99 at Value Village, and for just $1 more, you can get larger artwork at HomeSense. Not to mention, they also sell 2 packs for around $29.99, which breaks down to less than the price of this single piece at the thrift store. Also, circling back to the inconsistent pricing, these two photos have a $5 price gap, and the only real difference is the photo itself. If I've missed something here, let me know, but I really don't think the one on the right should be priced higher. Going back to my point about knowing the market, I really want to emphasize how important it is to have a general sense of pricing across a variety of places. In addition to places like the dollar store and higher-end retailers, I also like to scope out the garage sales as well as keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace. It's really just about comparing everything across the board so you can make smart, intentional choices. The good news is, those amazing thrift wins are still out there. You just have to know how to recognize them. One of my favorite wins of all time is the Struck Tube rug I found at Value Village for just $14.99. Since I'm familiar with the brand and the average price of their rugs, I knew this was an amazing deal. Struck Tube is currently selling the same one for $129, which means I saved almost 90%. Now, while there are definitely some incredible deals to be found, not every low price is actually a good deal, especially when it comes to quality. Thrift stores sometimes put out items that are damaged, overly worn, or just not salvageable. They'll price them in a way that looks like a bargain, but once you factor in the actual condition, the deal sometimes isn't worth it after all. Anything like pilled blankets, chipped or stained stoneware, or baskets that are already falling apart, these items usually don't have a long second life, and more often than not, they're really difficult, if not impossible, to restore. Speaking of stained stoneware, the other week I came across these otherwise lovely bookends for $9.99. Now, marble bookends can easily retail for $50 or more, so at first it felt like a steal, but I knew I wouldn't be able to stop looking at the staining, and getting this type of stain out from what I've looked up is incredibly challenging. If you guys know of a good way to do this, let me know, because these were beautiful. I just didn't think it was worth the extra effort even at the discounted price. That said, if you can find stone that's well maintained, it can absolutely be worth picking up. At the thrift store, I always check for pieces that have a smooth, even finish and are free of chips and cracks. I found some really great things like trays and candle holders for a great price, and if you can find stuff like this, I'd say it's well worth it. Another common dip in quality I've noticed is with baskets. Thrift stores always seem to have an endless supply of them, but I find they often look a lot better grouped together on a shelf than on their own, if that makes sense. Some of them are bent out of shape, too lightweight or flimsy to be functional, or already starting to unravel like this one. I forgot to look at the price here, but either way, to me this is the kind of thing that just isn't worth it, and I feel like it's also easy to see why someone got rid of it in the first place. Instead, you should look for things like structure and how it holds its shape. I like to look for baskets that have a good solid weight to them and are tightly woven. Anything made with natural materials like wicker, seagrass, or rope usually hold up well and can be used for heavier purposes. All this to say, baskets are, in my opinion, one of the most practical things to thrift, and when I find the good ones, they're also one of my favorite things to style. Okay, I want to talk about something that's a little harder to admit and something I think a lot of us have fallen into, and this is the idea of potential. Now, I know a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about here, and these are the items you pick up thinking, I could totally DIY this, or this might come in handy one day. Usually it's something with just enough charm to spark an idea, but not quite enough function or quality to actually follow through on. A while back, I thrifted this bench for like $10, and I remember I was so excited about it because I really needed a seat for my makeup setup. The only thing was that I didn't have a measuring tape, so I kind of just gambled and took it home hoping for the best. Obviously, the impulsive decision was a big mistake because it was way too tall, like without a question. I ended up putting it in the garage thinking maybe I'd use it for something down the road. Fast forward a year later and it was still sitting there taking up space and collecting dust. Then there was this other piece that I was way overly ambitious about. I got this table thinking I'd refinish it, but the truth is I'd never actually worked with something that size before, so it ended up being a way bigger project and something I didn't actually have the time for. Now, this isn't to say you should never pick something up for its potential, because I've done it many times, and when it works out, it can be incredibly rewarding. The key is being honest with yourself. How much effort will it be to get this to where I want it, and is it going to genuinely add value to my space? I like to do resets every so often and donate or sell items I no longer need. Being intentional when thrifting while also letting go of what no longer serves us really helps keep our space feeling fresh and open to new energy. Plus, it gives others a chance to enjoy and repurpose those items as well. All in all, thrifting is definitely a fun adventure, and you can find some truly great pieces if you're patient and intentional. Just remember, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a deal. Watch out for overpriced items and be mindful of anything that isn't worth fixing or doesn't serve a real purpose in your space. The best thrift finds are the ones that not only fit our style and our homes, but are also a fair deal and items we'll actually use and enjoy. Okay, so I really want to hear from all you guys. What have your thrifting stories been like lately, and have you run into any of these traps? Let me know down below so we can all learn from each other and stay mindful when shopping. Thank you so much for hanging out, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great week, and I will see you in the next one.